Hello to everybody out there in the world. We are Species Canine, and this is an installment of our new series known as Story Time, in which Jared will be telling me a story every week about a different breed, and y'all get to listen in on it. So snuggle in, get your favorite drink, maybe some iced tea, some popcorn, and get ready as Jared tells me the story of what dog is this week.
Well, some would call it the African bush dog. Others might refer to it as the Congo Terrier, and AKC refers to it as the Basenji dog.
Basenji, you had one of those, didn't you?
I did. Little Ollie was a Basenji. So, appreciate that, Taylor. So we'll dive right into it. So, as we discuss this breed, we're going to first talk a little science, a little about the DNA. So one of the studies I found did a DNA testing of numerous breeds and wanted to determine which breed was closely related to the wolf. And they tested different wolves throughout the world, Canada, Siberia, Sweden, Iran, Mexico, Canada, United States. And the first group of dogs that were closely aligned with the wolves were the Shar-Pei, Shiba Inu, the Akita, and Chow. The next group, which was a standalone group, was the Basenji, which is very interesting. So this is a very ancient breed, and first documented history, what they believe to be the Basenji based off of cave paintings, were found in the year 6000 BC, Libya, sorry. And is a Basenji-like pariah dog with the perked ears, curly tail, all these paintings. However, we do know for a fact that the Egyptians had Basenjis in as early as 3000 BC through mummifications and paintings and statues and things like that. So the Basenji was initially used for hunting, and they were used for in packs of chasing large animals and things like that. We'll discuss more so on that. But there's actually kind of a really cool folk tale, story tale, whatever you want to refer to it as. The Egyptians believed that the Basenji actually captured fire from the sun. And they were actually used and not just as animals and as pets and things like that, but they actually used them in animal sacrifices as well. So the Basenji was definitely an animal that was revered and possibly even worshipped in some form in the early 6000 BC, 3000 BC era. That was a 3000 year time span there, but more so now the dogs originating from the region of the Congo and things, where the pygmies were using them and still use them to this day for hunting. And they wear bells on their neck, and they listen for how excited the dog is when they're chasing, and listen for the bell for them to know that they're onto something. And so the pygmies would line up. They'd have typically the younger men would hold these long nets, and the other men would fan out like another half circle, and the dogs and men would drive animals into the nets, and the men that were holding the nets stayed very, very quiet, and the other ones would make noise and actually have a drummer that would be drumming a beat, and the dogs with the bells would herd these animals into the fence into these nets, and they would catch them and spear the animals and kill them at that point and be able to harvest the meat.
So the dogs were used to chase and almost like flush out the prey.
Yes, into the net so they could be killed and then harvested at that point. I'd mentioned the pygmies of Africa, one of the oldest cultures that we know of. Were using these dogs for hunting, and they still do to this day. And this is where most of the Basenjis that we have today really originated from. And we're going to discuss that here shortly with that. But one of the interesting facts about these dogs and their history and their lineage comes from their paws. So dogs have 4 toes in the front. Unlike other dogs, Basenjis have a paw like a jackal. Their 2 toes in the front are connected, forming essentially 1 toe, even though they are split. So we'll pop a picture of that here.
That's weird.
Yes. So historians and researchers believe that the jackal and the Basenji were actually crossbred. They don't believe this happened naturally. They do believe this was actually something that the Egyptians were doing. So in the course of this breeding happening and things, the Basenji is a very, very independent dog. And the ones that survived and lived the longest and were able to essentially breed and be bred were the ones that were the most aggressive in hunting, that were really good at hunting, because they didn't eat if their owners didn't eat. And they also hunted on their own for their own food because they were pretty much, almost a feral type dog in Africa. Like it was talked about, they were used for ritual sacrifice and things like that, but also for preserving the hunter gatherer lifestyle. The tribes and things that were more of the agricultural and farming didn't have Basenjis. It was truly the hunter gatherers that were using these dogs and keeping these dogs to go hunt. The Basenji is also known as a talking dog because they don't bark. They have a really high pitched whine, not so much the traditional dog bark that we'd see, but the interesting fact about their toe. And I never noticed that on my own Basenji. I wish I would have now, but that's a very interesting thing to be looking at. So if you do have a Basenji, look at their toe. We will post the notes and the research that I got in the show notes, so you can look at that as well and read more about these amazing dogs and how they were used really for hunting in the jungles and stuff of Congo, and their history coming into the United States. So we have a very ancient breed that's in Africa. And so how did they come about? How did they come into the Americas? So in the 1880s, they were first imported into England. And the original group that were brought in, as we discussed, they were called the African bush dog or Congo terrier, all died of distemper.
Wow.
The whole lot. There was, I think they brought in like 8 or 10 dogs. They brought them in to England. They were imported and they all died.
Did dogs have vaccines in 1880?
They did not have a vaccine for distemper. And they all died. So it wasn't until the 1936 when a lady by the name of Olivia Burns successfully imported the Basenjis into England and began to breed them. So Basenjis come in 3 unique colors. They're red and white, brindle, and white and black. However, nobody, from what I read so far, nobody was able to successfully breed the brindles. They're
so
only
like brindle parents couldn't make a brindle kid?
They could only breed, they're only finding those in Africa. And then, so she started breeding them here, successfully doing so, actually breeding them in England. And then Mrs. Burns sent Basenjis to the United States and Canada, and that's where the American story picks up, and that's in 1937. So this is post-World War I, pre-World War II, that we will start doing this. She continued to import more from Africa to increase the genetic gene pool. 1938 to 1939. Then she was unable to continue to do any of that stuff once World War II started. And then came along another lady named Mrs. Trundle Williams, Tudor Williams, who started breeding as well in England. And with those Basenjis there, started to continue to create the standard for them. And the first two Basenjis were able to be introduced into AKC and actually earned titles for obedience and things, was in 1945. Some other people started getting involved, some doctors and everything like that. People started to fall in love with the breed, and throughout the early 40s, started to get more and import more from Africa.
Outside of Africa, is there such a thing as a working Basenji?
Not that I read. And the only work that the Basenjis technically do is a hunting dog, just to hunt in packs and chase down large breed animals, so owners could kill them. More Basenjis, two more got actually, ironically enough, in 1941 were brought in from Africa, along with some baby gorillas. And the two groups they actually were named was 𝐾𝐸 and 𝐾𝐨𝐧'𝐭, 𝐾ASENYI. Became very important to the breeding of America and in Europe. 𝐾𝐸 won a group second in show in California in 1945. So that dog definitely has some history and lineage there. And I'm not going to go through the different dogs and things that came up through the AKC and stuff, but one of the important things I wanted to note about this was the AKC actually stopped allowing dogs to be certified into the class, and it took several petitions by Basenji and the clubs and enthusiasts to get the AKC to reopen the class in 2008, to open their stud book to allow more dogs to be listed into the AKC. And they did that for an additional 5 years. And in 2009, 10 additional dogs imported from Africa were registered. So this isn't saying that dogs that were already registered, a mom, a bitch, and a sire that were bred, they were already, and their puppies would be registered, but importing more from Africa. It wasn't until very recent times, 2009, that the AKC would allow these 10 additional dogs to be listed, which is pretty insane. But that just allows for more of the genetic gene pool to be pure, and not have so much crossbreeding and so forth. So if you have a Basenji, you can go back and you can thank Miss Victoria for allowing that, because she did her efforts to bring in these dogs and breed them and keep them alive from Africa. And when you think about that, having a dog that was, so isolated in a world that's, I want to use the word pure. There's not being contaminated in a world. Remember, this is, early 1900s, mid 1900s there, where you're still having hunter-gatherer tribes that are still living there, that don't know what a combustion engine is. They don't know what an airplane is. They don't know any of these things, right? They're very simple living, and they're not exposed to the germs and things that the rest of the world has been exposed to. So you take these dogs from essentially, lack of a better term, a sterile environment, and now are being brought into a world where they're exposed to all kinds of diseases, and distemper being the one that killed them. And so they had to solve that. That is the history of the Basenji. There is a lot of information on it. There's actually a university of Basenji that offers courses on the Basenji. So if you're interested in that, it's the Basenji University Course 101 and course number 103 that you can look into and take more. We will be posting some of the photos from from the documents and research that we did here, along with the links into the show notes that you can take a look at as well if you want to continue to read about this even in depth. So much so that you can even read about the different names and things of the dogs that were used to preserve the breed in the Americas. I highly recommend that if you're a Basenji enthusiast. They're an amazing dog, whether they are truly a dog or have some jackal in them. But either way, it's an ancient breed. It's an amazing breed. I'm so glad they still exist. They have not gone extinct. Not too many of the breeds that you can say they were documented from 6000 BC still exist. And for the most part, these dogs are what they are. They have not changed. They don't have, show line Basenjis or working line Basenjis. These dogs are what they are. The breed was so recognized that Scott and Fuller used them in their studies when they were trying to initially prove, was it about nurture versus nature? They used the Basenji for that. Because of how raw and ancient this breed is, and very, very independent breed. Amazing dogs. I had one. She was poorly bred. I believe she was actually part of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a backyard breeding situation. Because when I found her, she definitely had puppies. You could tell from just her nipples and things, and being so low to the ground. But she was an amazing dog. I really do miss Ollie. She was a great dog for the very short time that we had her. And so if you were interested in having an ancient breed, I would highly recommend having a Basenji. They're fun. They have a great personality, high drive dog. They love to work. They love to chase and have a good time. But they do have an amazing little personality. I can't say enough about them.
Yeah, they're a great size too for dogs with drive. They're smaller.
Yep. When I had Ollie for a long period of time, we lived on a farm. I had chickens and things like that, and she loved chasing the chickens and helping me catch the chickens and do things like that. And she was just a fun dog with a really great personality. I didn't have to do a whole lot of training with her. She just was naturally in tune with wanting to work with a human. And if you think about it, that's what they're bred to do. Work with humans for the hunt.
That's great. That's awesome. Thank you for telling that story.
Yeah, it was definitely fun. I learned a lot researching it. I encourage you guys to research the breeds. There's some fun breeds out there. So we'll continue to do this. We'll bring out some other fun breeds that we can all learn about and just share the knowledge and the history of these animals. I think it's worth knowing, especially, owning a dog that might have been owned by the pharaohs. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. Especially because the pharaohs were smart. They liked cats too.
Yeah. They worship the dogs. They mummified them, and they let them, mummified them with their owners, and they made statues and things out of them, and they really enjoyed their dogs. So they set highly prized and worshipped.
All right. Well, thank you so much for watching the video and listening to the story. I hope y'all got some education out of it. If you liked this video, go ahead and like and subscribe for the algorithm. If you want to learn more about dog training, dog breed history, we also have a podcast. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. And as always, train smart.